Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. There won't be a ton of animation in this video since I'm working on a much bigger project that I'll be hopefully releasing later this month. But I still wanted to talk about Echo and how some people have responded to it. So when I search up Echo review on YouTube, most of the results are super negative. I'll give my review on the show in a bit, but I think a lot of these people are being way too overdramatic. People are calling this show trash or a mess, but the biggest descriptor they've used is woke. Have these people seen She Hulk? Have they watched Barbie? Did they see Batwoman or Supergirl? Those are woke. Look, I'm not one who enjoys overly woke movies or shows. That stuff really annoys me actually. And I've been very critical of Marvel since Endgame. But to call this show or its marketing woke is just being disingenuous. I haven't seen much marketing for Echo, but what I've seen is certainly nothing like other woke marketing in the past. I guess it's because Echo is a woman who's deaf and Native American, so that makes the show woke, I guess. Echo wanting to take over Kingpin's empire is in line with the character. That doesn't make her or the show feminist propaganda. If you want to call this show mid or boring, I could certainly understand that. But to call it woke or a hot mess is way too far. But of course, a certain side of the internet profits from hating new things. So why would they give actual constructive criticism when crying like a baby gets you money? Also, it's become a trend for a lot of these channels to hate on a project and call it woke whenever there's a character who's not a white man. That's a bit sus.
The imposter is sus!
Pillar of Garbage made a video about this recently, and I highly recommend you check out that video afterwards, as it kind of goes more into detail on all this. Link in the description. So with all that, let me give my review of Echo now. Spoilers ahead. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I was really hoping Echo would be the Andor of the MCU, meaning there was something amazing in a sea of mid or bland. And while Echo is definitely nowhere near the heights of Andor, I still think Echo was a win for Marvel. The MCU has been going on a downward train for a while now, but I think both this and What If hopefully mark a shift in the quality for the MCU. I really liked Echo's journey throughout the show. You can tell she really wants to leave her violent life behind, one that's been controlled by Kingpin her entire life. She's trying to end the cycle of violence, but her past continues to bring her back into it. I also really liked the family dynamics that were portrayed. The grandpa was my favorite. He actually reminds me of my grandpa a little bit. Maya and her family all have shared trauma from her mother's death. Seeing Echo begrudgingly reconnect with her family was really nice because it showed a very human experience of how people deal with trauma. You can see that Echo blames her family for abandoning her and, at the start of the show, avoids them at all costs. But as Maya slowly heals over the show, she and her family forgive each other for everything that's happened. I think Kingpin stole the show here. His presence just invokes fear. You can tell how much control he has. He has manipulated Maya her entire life, and you can see how far he goes here with that. I actually had a nightmare recently that Kingpin kidnapped me, so rip to myself. What really elevated this show for me though was its portrayal of Choctaw culture, but more importantly, Maya's relationship with her culture. My main problem with Miss Marvel was that there was a huge emphasis on portraying Muslim/Pakistani culture, but for the most part, we never see how Kamala feels about her culture. Her bangles could really be any space bracelet, and Kamala's relationship with her mom is basically the extent to which we see Kamala's reaction to her culture. A big reason I love Daredevil is because we are constantly seeing Matt Murdock's relationship with Catholicism, both the ups and the downs. At the start of Echo, Maya is very distant from her culture, and because of her childhood trauma, she avoids anything to do with her Choctaw roots. But as Echo is forced to be around her hometown, she slowly reconnects with her people, both figuratively and literally. The themes of the Choctaw people are ingrained into the show. Respecting life, remembering your ancestors, inner healing. These are integral to Maya's character arc. I think there could also be an argument as to making a comparison between this show and how US culture assimilates Native American people. with Kingpin being the symbol for the US. From a young age, Maya is manipulated into believing violence is the way, and she unconditionally follows Kingpin. She completely forgets or even releases her ties to her culture and replaces it with Kingpin's desires. A lot of immigrants are asked to give up their culture in the promises of a good life, when the goal really should be that every culture can prosper here, as the founding fathers intended. This is especially the case with second generation immigrants, as they start losing many of their original country's traits for American life. Things like their first language, the food they eat, or certain traditions. This pretty much happens to Maya until she reconnects with her mother and fully embraces her culture. I don't know if this theme is something the writers intended, but it's certainly worth talking about. So, now for my criticisms. I think the show's pacing is a bit wonky. The first episode is essentially a recap episode since a lot of Maya's story was already told in Hawkeye. I actually really enjoyed the first episode, but I could see new people getting lost on what's happening. The second episode was also kind of boring in my opinion. I know this is a character driven story, but there wasn't much intrigue built up yet for me to be super invested. Though Maya's discussion with Henry about taking over Kingpin's empire was certainly interesting. I don't really blame the show for this though, because Disney Plus has a really stupid trend of limiting their shows to 6 episodes per season, which was another thing. The show was way too short. It seemed like there was a lot missing from the show. I can't quite explain what it is, but it seems to me that there was a lot taken off the cutting board. A lot of the anti woke crowd hated how Kingpin cried in the finale. For context, Maya used her Choctaw powers to give Kingpin a vision of his past. I actually think the scene was in line with Kingpin's character since he's never been able to move past his trauma. I just think that the scene itself was directed a bit weird. Like, if we see Kingpin confused for a second and then he slowly starts crying, I think that would have worked better. Or even better might have been if they had Kingpin as a kid crying, since Kingpin really is still just a kid. I think people have this impression that Kingpin's most important trait is his violence and rage. Don't get me wrong, that's a big part of him, but his most important trait is his manipulation. We see how he uses people's fear and trauma for his goals. So maybe we don't see him as physically involved as in Daredevil, but this was still a great portrayal of the character. Perhaps people complaining about this has more to do with the ending feeling anticlimactic. I get what they were going for with the main theme being inner healing, and Maya certainly wouldn't have been able to beat Kingpin one on one. But with the runtime, the finale felt a bit like a speed run. So I wasn't able to feel that theme as much as I think the writers intended. Those are really my biggest complaints about the show. The pacing and length keeps the show back from being S tier, but ultimately I had a good time watching, and I really enjoyed seeing Maya's character development. Okay, I'll talk about the devil in the room now. I don't care what the anti-woke crowd people say, I thought the Daredevil versus Echo fight was awesome. I really missed those fight sequences from Daredevil, and in my opinion, the fights in the show were very much like that. If the season was longer, I might have wanted to see more Daredevil, but given the runtime, I actually like how Daredevil was kind of just a fun cameo. Plus, he's getting his own show soon, so I'll be patient for a bit longer. Overall, I'd give Echo an 8.5 out of 10. There are some things holding the show back from being amazing, but I had a good time, and I think this marks a good direction for Marvel, unlike other things. But let me know what you thought of Echo if you've seen it. I'm definitely open to hearing constructive criticism of the show. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.